Hey, this is Chris. Keeping it real, facts over fear. How you doing this morning? I want to talk about asymptomatic cases and cases that are unconfirmed. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, well, both of those terms describe the same population in North Carolina. There is the idea that has been floating around since the beginning of this pandemic that asymptomatic transmission, in other words, people who, or unconfirmed cases, people get an unconfirmed case, they've got it, they don't know they have it, and then they can spread the virus to other people. And that's been like the working assumption since the beginning of this pandemic, that we have this problem that we can't really see the true extent of the pandemic, because it's almost like a pandemic within a pandemic, if you will. It's the unknown part of the pandemic. It's like we're looking at an iceberg called COVID-19, and we can only see a little bit that's above the surface, and we can't see the rest of it. We don't know what's going on. It's like a bad science fiction movie where, the aliens are shapeshifters and we don't know who's human and who's not. Trying to find all these, different ways to explain it, but I hope you're following my logic. And so I don't have a problem with that explanation exactly, or I didn't have a problem with that explanation exactly until the past several weeks, where looking at the chart, the 14-day rolling average of confirmed cases, after dropping from some pretty big heights in mid-January, I think that's when we hit the peak of cases, it has dropped down to about 1,500 or so a day, and it has stayed there for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks solid now, the data, that graph has gone flat at about 1,500 cases a day. And I'm trying to think about why that could be when there's so much downward pressure there should be a lot of downward pressure on the number of confirmed cases. Number one, the rate of vaccinations is still running at well over 350,000 a week. That should put a lot of downward pressure on the number of cases. We are not in winter anymore. We're definitely into spring. We have had several here in North Carolina, where I live, north central North Carolina. We have had really several beautiful days already, highs in the mid-60s or higher. The kind of temperatures, you understand, right, that this virus does, the trend of the virus has a high correlation to the weather, specifically the temperature. And as the temperature gets colder, the virus spreads more. And why is that, class? Because people aren't able to meet outside. They meet indoors in poorly ventilated homes. I did a video on that, unintended consequences, that these modern airtight homes are the worst places to be safe from a virus. But back to my point. So we have that. The temperature is going up. That should bring downward pressure to the numbers. And so, but the numbers have stalled. They have plateaued. They're flatlining at 1,500 a day, 14-day rolling average, which calls into question, to me, my conclusion from all of this is that it calls into question the idea that there is this large population of unconfirmed cases there, and therefore there is not a great deal of asymptomatic spread. Now, I'm not saying there's not any asymptomatic spread. I'm just saying that if the number of cases, and we've gone through this in the COVID herd immunity chart for North Carolina now since last August, trying to figure out, how many real cases are there per confirmed case. And so, I started at 20 to 1. That obviously wasn't right. Went to 10, then 9, because that's what CDC said. obviously that's not even, because if that were true, we would be done with it. We would be done already, because we have 1 million confirmed cases. If it was 9 to 1, that'd be 9 million people. I mean, that's the population of the United States. I mean, of North Carolina. So if it's not 9 to 1, maybe it's 5 to 1, but even 5 to 1, you're talking about 5 million cases plus 2 million active vaccines. That's still right there at the herd immunity threshold. And so my feeling is the number of unconfirmed cases is certainly not zero, but it's certainly not a huge multiplier of the number of confirmed cases. It is probably, and of course we will find out what it was as people get more vaccination, more people get vaccinated. There will come a point where the case numbers will drop, and then we'll have a much better idea of how many unconfirmed cases there really were. So that is, something I'm going to be keeping an eye on in my charts. It might be that it's like a 1-to-1 correspondence, like there's one asymptomatic or unconfirmed case per confirmed case, and I think that's just my gut reaction, just from thinking about it. There's nothing, I don't have any data. Of course, nobody has any data, right? So we're all just guessing here, pretty much. I wish that that people who are a whole lot better trained and smarter than I am would, actually take a shot at this. But I've not read anybody do it. So, especially from the CDC, but I don't expect much from the CDC anymore, quite frankly, or the WHO. So that's what I think. I think the number of unconfirmed cases, and I know there's serological studies that the CDC has used to estimate how many unconfirmed cases there are. Obviously, there's something terribly wrong with the methodology they used to arrive at 9 to 1. I don't know how they did that exactly. I just read the results. So I think that the chances are not high that there's a great population of people out there who have had the virus and don't know it, never got tested. I just don't think it's true. I think it's like I said, a relatively low number. It could be like 1 million, could be like maybe 2 million. That's about it. So you're talking about a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratio of asymptomatic unconfirmed cases to confirmed cases. So those are my thoughts on the matter. And so it really does look like the vaccine is what's going to push us down the final leg of this pandemic, and that's what's going to bring it to an end. And so I'm glad we have it. Still not ready to take it yet, though. But that's my personal feeling. I don't blame you if you want to. All right. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the section below. Like and subscribe.